a very memorable match to start things off.
And they were in Little Rock, Arkansas. It wasn't the old Barton Coliseum at the fairgrounds. A bright new, well, not a bright new arena, a big new arena that had a lot of lights turned off. And I know that I will say this, they couldn't have had a better match to get that number of people to be as loud as they were for an hour than MJF and Ospreay. And, here's the thing. Everybody already knows it's not a spoiler here. The MJF and Ospreay for the international title went 59 minutes, 58 seconds. And so we can't do a blow-by-blow description of, well, they did this and that and the other thing. I wrote down thoughts and comments. And by the way, I do want to send a special shout out for the guy in the front row with the beautiful Bobby Eaton t-shirt on. You got good taste, pal.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yes, it caught my eye because I recognized the design, and there it was. But this was, and I had a few issues with it that I will talk about, but this was levels above what the professionalism that is usually on display in a variety of fields on AEW television, not only in the ring, but also, I'm sorry, this couldn't have been Tony's idea to do this. This is for somebody who claims to be a fan of, wrestling from way back and, a good quality product. Tony's booking is just insane. It's, it was melded or molded by the internet marks of the early basement E-Fed days, as I'm now coming to know it was a thing that was going on with these people. But this is as old as you can get. This would be Sam Muchnick, a fucking teasing an hour Broadway and then a title switch to come back, I would think, with a rematch at Wembley Stadium so that I would think, Ospreay can get his big win in front of his home crowd because these two are obviously the top guys in the company now. And but you know what I'm saying? It's as old school booking as you can get. Now, the question I had was, these days, it's not like the territory days. The fans were used to long programs with regular rematches between guys or teams, and in a weekly territory, some guys would wrestle 15 weeks in a row, but with different stipulations, and they do hot finishes to lead to rematches, and the business would build and be biggest when they finally did the blow-off. In modern years, it seems like that's reversed itself, and the first match between two, people that somebody care about is the big one. And then, now that they've seen it, they want something else because they all know it's a work and blah, blah, blah. And people almost look, some of these fans in AEW, I've seen actually, well, they gave us a rematch. Like that was a bad thing. That was what you shot for the first 100 years of wrestling, was having a fucking rematch. It meant the first one was good enough to bring back. But anyway, then I thought, but that's only really for the mainstream fan at this point. Nobody is watching AEW if they're just a casual wrestling fan. They would have laughed it off a long time ago. So for their core audience, Brian, I guess what I'm saying is they can probably get away with MJF and Ospreay after this a number of times because people will know that, well, fuck, it's going to be better than anything else they give us. So for that audience, I think this works. Do you agree?
I agree with that. I mean, there are no casual bumping in the wrestling people just happening to watch this show.
Yeah. But I mean, also that they would be accepting of rematches with these guys because of what they saw here.
Yeah, MJF tells in-ring stories.
Yes.
The follow-up is on AEW. Whether they follow up on it or allow him to figure out a way to follow up on it, whatever it may be. Ospreay is good in the ring. He's great in the ring. He's got charisma on his promos. He's never been produced for American television ever.
Yeah.
And those are the things around the edges that need to be worked on. And I thought in this match, he showed a lot of little things he hasn't showed before, especially in the face with the selling. I thought his facial reactions are really good.
Well, see, that's the thing. He's like, we've mentioned it with other people. And I think at one point, Darby Allin, Swerve, Ospreay is best when he's matched with a wrestler, not a gymnast. When he's matched with a gymnast, then they try to outdo each other, and it just goes too far, and there's no baby face and no heel and no story being told, and it's just flipping. But when he's matched with a wrestler, then it's the baby face foiling a heel with fancy moves that he's doing, and he's not doing as many of them because the other guy ain't going to fucking put up with it. And he's also, there's not as many flips overall because the other guy ain't doing them. Now with MJF, he can actually do the fucking flips. He's just smart enough that he doesn't do a lot of them. And he figures out a way to put them in the spot where it makes sense, where people will pop not on some big bump, but that he landed on his feet from something, or he had a shocked expression on his face, or whatever the fuck. You see what I'm saying? So this brought out the best in Ospreay. And I'm becoming a fan as you said earlier, if he can be produced for American television to get away from something, because remember, he's been in New Japan. And that's where you learn most of these bad habits that we see now. Anywhere in Japan, because they all do the same shit now, just like over here. And the UK scene is predominantly indies. And they have indies that sometimes draw a few thousand people. But point being, they need to get him an experienced veteran producer that can just work on his matches, that wants to teach him. And not just to do all of this shit, but what to do and when, and work on his match structure rather than his execution of moves. But anyway, and I saw somebody on Twitter say, well, I knew they were going a long time because they started so slow. They didn't start at 100 miles an hour because they didn't have to. The people were there already. They wanted to see this. MJF got the heel reaction. Ospreay got the babyface reaction. You weren't in doubt by the way they worked the match. It was obvious who the heel was and who the babyface was. So that was a big help right off the bat. And they kept it moving, even though they were going an hour, but it was ebbs and flows. It was peaks and valleys. There was stuff for them to sell. So, that was, and honestly, I don't see how they remember all that shit to keep it fresh for a fucking hour. But do you see a little Candido when MJF is selling like a heel?
Yes, I could see that. Especially, when Chris got into really good shape in ECW, not that MJF's that ripped or anything, but it's not that crazy body type. They look somewhat similar.
But the where he'll take the flat back bump and bounce to his feet with the rubber legs and the cockeyed expression, or vice versa, face first and then back, or just again, both of these guys
two naturals, Candido and MJF.
They can both sell. MJF may be the best heel seller to me right now in the business when he has a match like this, because it's the perfect heel body language. And everybody knows heels and baby faces don't sell anything remotely alike. I would think everybody knows that. Well, you can't tell sometimes from watching television. The babyface sells to get sympathy, to exhibit pain, hurt, the facial expression, to be beaten down. He's the underdog. He's trying to fight back against this evil oppressor. That's the way he sells, more realistically and cringily and the body, whatever. Whereas a heel, he's got the chance to oversell. The people love it when he takes a bigger bump or has an exaggerated facial expression, or they want to see him get the shit kicked out of him in a faster paced and more picturesque way. Whereas the heel gets the heat on the baby face in a more deliberate and occasionally violent way to try to elicit the sympathy for the comeback. So MJF sells like fucking heel, like crazy, and Ospreay did a tremendous job selling as a babyface with his facial expressions and cringes and the steamboatishness of the way he would grip body parts and things. So, and by the way, here was a random note that I made. MJF and Will Ospreay should both be making approximately 10 to 15 times what they're paying Okada. Because he's not even in the same league. He shouldn't be allowed in the same fucking ring as these two guys.
Forget about Okada. How about the Young Bucks?
Well, I'm just saying of the recent multi-million-dollar acquisitions. I'm not talking everybody knows that.
I'm talking about value to AEW. What you just said is, I mean, Will Ospreay still has to prove himself, but it's early and the results are good. But MJF, by far, is the biggest thing AEW has. They'd be stupid not to throw every dollar they could at him, especially because Tony can. Tony can. He
doesn't even have to throw them. He can just flip them like Frisbees.
Listen, if Tony wants publicity, pay MJF more than Dwayne. That'll get publicity.
There you go.
He paid him $35 million a year? Holy shit.
But no, I'm just saying, if I sat down as the head of a wrestling company with anybody I've ever worked for, Dusty Rhodes, Bill Watts, Jim Crockett, fucking Vince McMahon even, and I showed them tape of MJF, and I showed them tape of Will Ospreay, and I showed them tape of Okada. And I said, and whatever the numbers are, but I said, I paid $1 million for each of these guys. They would agree with me on MJF. They would agree with me on Ospreay, and they'd look at Okada and say, what the fuck have you done? What are you, a fucking imbecile? I'm just saying. So then, both guys, their stuff had snaps. They were not snaps. Both guys had snap.
Hey,
they were jive and the beatniks. They were laying their chops in. The fake forearms weren't there. If they were going to hit each other, they attempted to fucking make it look like a contest. They look like athletes. They're in shape. They weren't working sloppy or just doing ridiculous dives. I have an issue with all at the point that they went out on the floor, and I knew about every minute one of them would roll under the ropes to break the count. At that point, I appreciate the effort, but guys, but it's modern wrestling. You got to be on the floor.
Yeah. When you say "but guys," do you mean you guys shouldn't be on the floor that long, or don't even waste your time breaking up the count because no one else is? What are you saying?
Well, either or both, maybe, because see, the thing is, it's easier to watch on television and not really realize because you're caught up in the different camera angles and the close-ups. You know what's going on, but when you're in the arena, when you can see the whole picture, when you're sitting in the stands and you see the referee counting to 10, 1, and then 2, or maybe he just stops counting already and just gets out and asks them, please get back in. And they're just out there for a minute and a half. I'm not talking about these guys, but I'm talking about general in any match. And guys are out there for a minute and a half. It looks bad because it just takes you out of it because you can see everything. It's easier to overlook that on television, but God damn it, is there any reason you can't do 20 or 25 seconds on the goddamn floor and roll a guy in and fucking take a bump out the other side instead of you. But they're setting up. Here's another thing. When they went out in the stands, I'm not a fan because the pros are not worth the cons. And so I'm saying when they're on the floor a lot, they're setting up flips or moves on the barricade, which that's awful close to the people. And it gets a little stagier out there and a little more dangerous. And it's harder for people in the building to see. Yes, they can watch the screen, but did they come there live to watch television? But when you go out in the stands, the legal liability is not worth it. Because let's say you've got the guy in front of you and you're punching him in the head right there, but you're drawing back and your elbow hits the fucking kid in the face that had to look around with his phone. And they do that in the indies. They've been doing it in the indies for 25 years. That's because anybody at an indie show at a rec center, so I ain't got anybody to sue here. They ain't got a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of, as Mama Cornette used to say. But they know Tony Khan's a billionaire. And they'll get sued too. It's not worth the legal liability. It's dangerous in terms of up there on the concrete fucking stairways and in the middle of the fans where you're trying to be fighting in a small area and not hurt anybody, but you'll slip in beer and you'll break your fucking ankle, whatever the fuck. It's not a controlled environment where, yes, they've got security guys standing there while they're... Thankfully, these security guys are not the Secret Service either because they're used to the fans wanting to pat them on the back. If some guy did get drunk and just, I'm going to punch somebody in the face, they'd be there and gone before these guys know what the fuck. And you're doing close-up magic with people all around you only feet away. So you got to lay the shit in or it looks phony. And that means you're probably going to get potatoed. So fighting in the stands in the crowd is something you do at shows in bars in indies, not at a major company. Which is why if you see anybody in the WWE going through the crowd, even Jey Uso, as much as they love him for his entrance, it looks like he's got Secret Service along with him, right? And they've got an expensive camera with him. But they're not out there just goddamn hitting each other with fucking garbage cans. Do you see what I'm saying, Brian?
I do.
So, however.
And then there's the however.
Having said that, when Ospreay stood MJF on his head in the garbage can, that was fucking hilarious. But they stretched the count out. But it's good, at least. It didn't look fakey. The fans were into it. So, these guys, if you're that good, and if the fans are into you, to that degree, you can stretch things. I'm not saying you can't. Some of these guys can't hit the fucking ropes right, so I'm not going to give them any goddamn leeway to go out and do more garbage shit when they can't grab a headlock. When guys are this good, and they like it, you can have a little leeway. Somehow, they have made the Long Island Sunrise, the Canadian Destroyer, look plausible. When MJF gave him that fucking thing, not only MJF, he landed it perfect. They flipped, boom, Ospreay, a great fucking bump. That's the closest I've ever seen that thing to be like, wow, he gave him something, rather than, well, they just fucking flipped each other. Anyway.
Can I say something here at this point?
I wish you would.
It applies to the entire match, and I posted about it on Twitter, and I got a big reaction. The commentary was all sorts of awful. I'm not blaming Taz, although Taz gets mixed up with these two chuckle fucks, and that drags him down, because there's too many times, and again, you could talk about it in this match, you could talk about it in other things. Serious things are happening, they're laughing. Excalibur is a poor communicator. He spits out lots of words, yells them out.
Hey, now be fair. He was trying to use sentences.
If you try to listen to it and make sense of it, it's hard unless you actually know already what he's talking about. He's an awful commentator, and people need to start acknowledging how much Dynamite is held back by the commentating team. And then there's Shivani. It's almost impossible to be as useless on commentary as Shivani. And you hear people say, oh, it's nice nostalgia for my youth. When in your youth was he just sitting there yelling out nothing? Even if you like Shivani. He didn't do that on TBS with Crockett. That was David Crockett doing that. He didn't do it on Nitro. He wasn't good on Nitro, but he didn't do that. Now, he did do the hyperbolic, this is the greatest night in the history of our sport. And everything's the greatest this and the greatest that, to the point where everything he says means nothing. Because everything is the best. Everything is great. He's having a great time. This is a great classic of a match. Really, it sounds like you almost were like told to say that at that point. It didn't sound real. It sounded forced. So you have one guy who's yelling out stuff that sounds forced, who, by the way, is old. So he's an old guy trying to hang with these guys by just yelling out things.
Is that why he's calling the girls bitches? Because he's trying to be, with the cool kids and the hip cats?
I don't know. But for the people that want AEW to succeed, and we should all want it to succeed, but the people that are real AEW fans, one of the big come to Jesus talks is that the commentating team needs to go. And Shivani, if you want to keep him around, because he does lots of good stooge work, give him a microphone, let him be one of the 9 girls interviewing people. Excalibur needs to go back to Rosita. Until they can accept that he holds them back, that him being the lead commentator holds them back and holds a match like this back. Any other time in history...
He's a joke to any new viewer. Who would tune in and say, what the fuck?
He's a joke to any wrestling fan who really likes good wrestling. Because any classic match you could think of, you need a commentator who works. Lance Russell, Jim Ross, even Vince McMahon in his way for a big match, because he was the promoter. He wasn't Bill Watts, but it was the same principle. He knew what he wanted to get over. He knew he had to try to find a way to make it work. Sometimes he was ridiculous. But Excalibur, it just sounds like, you don't want to say just a fan, because we're all fans, but it just sounds like an amateur doing this big match. And this was a great match. They should have had great commentating on the match. You know what they should do? Instead of the Spanish announce feed, do a second English commentating feed. If you really want viewers, put me and Jim there. But you should do a second English commentating team with serious announcers. You got a whole bunch of people under contract. Riccaboni, Caprice Coleman, whoever else you have. Put them there. Because Excalibur and Shivani together is audio poison.
Ian Riccaboni would be a young, energetic voice that doesn't look like a fucking idiot Mark that was a wannabe fucking play wrestler for his own promotion that he helped pay for. It's just embarrassing on national television.
I'm serious. They should do a second audio feed. Give people that option. You want to see if your booking's better than everyone thinks it is? How about give us a real commentating team? If you want to keep these guys because of some weird loyalty to awfulness, do that. Have a second English commentating team, because a match like this gets ruined by bad commentary. And I saw Dave Meltzer tweet out that Shivani deserves credit.
What?
For getting this match over. There's the disconnect. He likes Shivani personally, so he makes a stupid comment that anyone who watched that match knows is ridiculous.
Well, he got the match over by saying, wow, this is a great match.
Wow, I'm so happy to be here. I can't believe they're paying me. This is amazing. I do nothing. The fuck out of here. That commentating team is so counterproductive. And I'm sorry to say that about Taz, but he's dragged in there because it's impossible to sit next to those two idiots and not have to talk to them.
Taz is... I've been there. He's like listening to these two go back and forth, and he's spacing out in his head because he's like, oh, God damn it.
And then there are other times that Taz will say something and then Shivani just repeats it like he had that thought, or then he'll say like, good call. Like he's the fucking person who should be deciding that. And then there are other times where Excalibur and Taz were almost going back and forth like commentators would. Taz and an awful commentator about the match. And Shivani just pipes in with like a non sequitur. Just out of nowhere, like, oh, isn't this awesome? Like, what? Shut up. Just don't say anything. And if Tony's telling you something in your ear, pretend your headphones don't work. But no, they're awful. Seriously, a match like this got hurt by the awful commentating. They need a second commentating team. Why not? Tony's got money. He's got the people there under contract already. Why not? You need to find a way to get people to watch this show. Make it so we can listen to it too.
Well, but back to the great match that was ruined by the awful announcing.
I didn't say that.
Yes, you did.
I didn't say they ruined the match. The match was great.
And is MJF's hammerlock DDT the goddamnedest thing you've ever seen? That doesn't look like something I would enjoy taking, but apparently he hasn't hurt anybody. They've got up and continued to have feeling in their extremities. And, you know, that's again, what I liked about this positive fashion. They were both using different style, the new style of things, a new style of wrestling, but doing different shit with it that didn't look stupid or hokey, and a different or unique twist on something, or something got built up and had a payoff when, like I referred to earlier, when, you know, MJF showed everybody he could flip and land on his feet. And then Ospreay did the same thing. And they were telling a story with the flipping. I didn't think it was possible. Here's something I could do without. I'd like to throw darts at people that do this, but MJF saved it for me. Did you see the part where Ospreay's got him down? He's in front of him, right? And he does like he does and so many of the others do. He turned his back on MJF, Ospreay did, and stood there like only a foot away from him, pointing at the sky for like he's on a fucking high dive, preparing to fucking run and hit the far ropes, not looking at his opponent at all. And MJF grabbed him from behind, turned him around, and bit his face. Good, which is what you ought to do if somebody you're in a fight with turns their back on you from a foot away and strikes a pose. If you did that to Dick Murdoch when you were a babyface and he was a heel, I bet you'd wake up in the locker room, because he would have just give you the rabbit punch to the fucking base of the skull and you wouldn't have remembered your fucking wife's name for 3 days. Anyway, and they did big stuff, but they sold it in between. MJF got the elbow off the top rope onto Ospreay through the table on the floor in, but this time the table held up, so he didn't have to just land on the goddamn floor and break his hip like a senior citizen locked up in a home. Again, and they did the double bridge 50 minutes in. That used to be a thing that Flair and whoever he was working with, they would try to see how deep in the match, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever the fuck, that they could do the double bridge spot with everybody involved weighing, 230, 240 pounds. And these guys did it 50 minutes in. And here's something else. When you talked about the commentary, we didn't even mention the whole story of the fucking match. They made slight references to how long the match had been going, nothing concrete until I think Tony got prodded because he said, well, I've just been told that we're at the 53-minute mark. And they were over 50 minutes in before they even started making a deal out of it.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything. Usually we hear from people at the shows that say, oh, you didn't hear the ring announcer was doing it. I didn't hear anything until the very end, like 1 minute left.
Yeah, then they piped 1 minute remaining like it was the goddamn automated fucking, answering machine message. But that's the thing is, they wouldn't have been giving anything away because it's television, especially it's unusual on their program that a match would last more than 30 minutes. So what you would have probably done is at the 30-minute mark, you would have started making remarks like, well, really at this point, we're over 30 minutes, folks, and they've been keeping up a hell of a pace. And then you would have probably about every 5 minutes started registering, well, we're at 35 minutes now, Taz, and certainly how much more gas can they have left in the tank at the speed in which they've been moving and the punishment. And then you start building that. So that by the time you get to 55 minutes, you're going, my God, now the question is, can either one of these guys win this thing? And especially if you know somebody is, that's when you start being convinced as announcers that it's a draw. And they just, at 53, oh shit, we forgot. We need to really start fucking building this up. So I don't know what was going on there, because that's part of the whole story of the fucking match. I mean, did I miss something? Because you listened to them to get mad more than I did.
No, and they suck. No, I don't think really too much was said about the specific time other than they were going a while. And it went by, it didn't feel like it was as long as it was, because it was moving and it was good. And the guys were doing a great job of selling everything, with their faces and everything, the whole bodies. They didn't say anything until 1 minute. That was it.
And again,
they talked a lot about the humidity. I don't know if you heard Excalibur attempting to explain humidity to wrestling. What the hell is going on with that announce team?
Well, and he's not a meteorologist, by the way. He didn't. He's trying to play one on television, like trying to play wrestling announcer. And also those guys, I have seen Flair go 60 with the best cardio in the industry at the time, documentably provable by his resting heart rate and all of these goddamn athletic commission fucking readings I used to see him give. And he'd still be drenched in sweat in a fucking arena with air conditioning after going 60 minutes. These guys are in shape. Their cardio's incredible. And again, I think Ospreay has the reputation for it. People think MJF, for some reason, can't either do the flips or can't fucking, in their minds, he can't wrestle. He doesn't do all those moves. He can. He's just smart enough to only do them every once in a while. Fucking dipshits. But anyway, at a minute left, they really, this has been better than watching almost anything else on AEW television. Here's one more thing. And this is, again, the psychology of these new, modern type of folks. But Ospreay goes for the Tiger Driver that he's sworn that he would never do again because he almost fucking hurt Danielson, or what did hurt him, but not permanently, whatever the fuck. But they've been fighting for 58 minutes. He's defending it, 59 minutes. He's defending his championship. He's got MJF up for the fucking thing, and he puts him down because he don't want to do it. And you heard some people in Little Rock kind of, because it's fucking stupid. And this guy's been healing him and fucking turned on his friend and has been poking him in the eye and kicking him in the balls, doing all this shit. Drop him on his fucking head. He deserves it. It's goddamn wrestling. And I have been in front of crowds in Little Rock, Arkansas. I assure you, if I had been tied to 4 different horses from my appendages and they shouted, "Ah!" the fans would have cheered highly. So that's another thing. He does in the regular fans might not these. I don't know what the fuck is going on with the sheeple that completely buy into this whole modern wrestling thing. But the average fan goes, well, fuck. He deserves to get beat now. Is this move illegal? No. Would he got disqualified? No. They've done every goddamn thing else to each other to try to fucking cripple and paralyze and put each other in an iron lung and a goddamn body cast. But he's got the guy ready to go, and he won't do it. He deserves to get beat now.
I think people understand. They've kind of established it. He's afraid to do the moves. He's afraid that's the one thing he can do to seriously hurt someone beyond
exactly.
Wrestling match.
And MJF is the goddamn biggest heel. That's what they want to see him hurt.
And when he finally does it to him, people will go crazy.
Okay, well, the point, then they shouldn't have had him tease the goddamn move.
But that's the whole tease. The whole tease is for he can't do it. He's afraid to do it.
He's a pussy.
Well, the whole tease is that he's going to eventually do it. He'll eventually get past this for whatever reason and do it. Yeah, but they're establishing it now.
After this guy comes over to my house once a week and kicks me in the balls for 3 or 4 months, I guess I'm going to fucking do something about it one of these days. Fuck him. If he had the fucking heel ready to go and defend his title with a legal move and he wouldn't do it because he's a fucking pussy.
He's a baby face.
And a goddamn baby face has to have some fucking balls to it. You think
you're being overly critical.
Would Stone Cold Steve Austin have stunnered the motherfucker?
He is not Steve Austin. That's not a fair comparison. No,
okay, well,
most baby faces are not Steve Austin.
Because Steve Austin was the biggest baby face in the history of the business.
Because he was a heel. Because he acted like a heel, which is what made him a baby face.
But he did that shit to the fucking people that deserved it. And MJF is the hottest fucking heel in the company, and he deserves it.
They're teasing it so that eventually he's going to hit it. They think it eventually will get a big pop. And then he'll win the match the one time he uses it.
He's fucking soft. Anyway, he didn't do it. And then MJF pushed Ospreay into the referee and he got the ring. We needed to see him get the ring better. It was revealed after the fact, but
the table spot earlier in the match, when MJF went on to him on the table on the floor, the camera was in an awful position there too. You couldn't see anything. It was like next to the table on the floor. So you didn't see anything. They're missing a lot of shit with the camera shots lately.
Well, that's because they only have a certain amount of angles they can shoot in that building before they reveal what's behind the curtain.
You know, I didn't even think of that. You know what? That's exactly what
they have to They have to, and look up the attendance while I'm going over the rest of the finish here, but that's a big building and they had to be judicious. They have one crowd shot where they can shoot the stands with a wide shot and there are people, and they have the hard camera shot and the floor camera. One of the handhelds has to shoot the people in the ring with the screen behind them because there's no people at that end of the building. But if they shoot the screen, you're seeing the screen, a different camera angle in some aspects is on the screen than they're taking for the broadcast. So you're seeing a guy looking at himself on the goddamn video screen. It's disorienting. But anyway.
Hey, the numbers, just so you know, as of the morning of the show, we don't have the final numbers just yet, but there were 2,603 tickets distributed. And again, it's their debut in the venue.
But how big is that building? How big is the building? Not what was it set up for? How big is the building?
The Simmons Bank Arena. Hold on one second.
I'll go back to the finish. MJF got the ring while he was down and Ospreay had been pushed into the referee, but you couldn't see it. It was revealed after the fact, but you didn't see him pull it out. I believe that the people they popped on the finish, but I believe they would have popped bigger if they'd understood exactly what happened, because there was a little delayed announcement after the bell rang. I don't know, but boom. MJF nails him, one good shot, boom, covers him, 1, 2, 3. And apparently the ring flew out of the ring, and they got a camera shot of it laying on the mat at ringside. But
so at least you saw it, yeah.
Yeah, so at least you saw it. But in 59-58, MJF is the new international champion. And I would immediately rematch this for Wembley Stadium, because why the fuck wouldn't you? That's the whole idea of the thing, I would think.
I thought the delay from the pinfall to the announcement was great because you can kind of hear the fans. They saw it. They know it happened. Did it really happen? Did this really happen? And then...
Well, yeah, and they were murmuring because they had the countdown on the screen finally, and they had the seconds. So you saw the pin at 2 seconds, but maybe somebody wasn't looking at everything and thought, was it a draw? What happened? It's a draw.
Because it seemed like it was going to be a draw. Once you realized they were going long, the first thought I think most people had was they're going to go to a draw.
Yeah.
And then,
obviously that was the intention.
And they took it to the very end. And what do you think of MJF, the work he's doing, reestablishing himself right now as a heel? In this match specifically, his behavior, going into the crowd. I know you're not a big fan of it because one day some guy will be like tackling him or something in the crowd.
Or there's just going to be an accident, a simple accident that's going to cost everybody some, if not money, aggravation. And I know Tony would obviously pay legal judgments for all the boys also, but you got to do depositions and blah, blah, blah. It's not fucking worth it.
But going to the very end and cheating to beat Ospreay, who the fans like, it's almost like he ripped off the fans too, because they all expected the draw.
Yes.
No one expected a heel to cheat.
Well, that's what he said in his interview. I'm going to fuck up the things and people that you like. I'm going to take away your enjoyment of these. It's the whole jealousy thing from his disorder. And it fits here, and he pulled the rug out from under him. So, and again, it's logical and exactly fits what what his reasoning for turning was. And as far as heel work in the ring, he worked as a babyface because he was over before as such the ultimate heel that didn't break character, as the kids say, and didn't do anything that wasn't true to MJF. And then he just started doing it against people that the fans wanted to see that done to, the other heels. And then he could change that around to, oh, now you like the kangaroo kick, or I poke him in the eye, and yay. But that's not a long-term thing. That's not getting over because of what you're doing as a babyface. That's getting over because of what you did as a heel was so fucking brilliant. So you can have the short-term babyface run. In the territories, this was easy to do. But you can't build a natural heel for a multi-year national wrestling career as a fucking babyface. He has to be a heel to establish himself to everyone. And that's the way he gets over. And then they begin liking him. So as the audience, when he finally does go to where the big boys play, to coin a phrase that's never been used before, he's going to have to establish that to a whole new audience. And within a few years or whatever it is, he will be so over as that level of a performer that they'll make him babyface again. Just a lot more people watching and a lot more money on the line.
Yeah, really, looking back, you have to wonder how counterproductive it was. And we thought it was at the time, but now looking back at the results, for Jericho to start talking about he thinks MJF needs to be a babyface, it's going to happen, just watch it happen. You put it in everyone's mind, and then you kind of forced it before it was time.
Yeah, he wanted to make it happen so he could work with him. And but anyway, that's to answer your question. Yes, he established his reasoning, his motivation. His match here was overall excellent and levels above, what everybody else around there is doing. And Ospreay, I'm a fan of his when he's with a talent like this, instead of somebody where they're just going to go out there and fucking Cirque du Soleil me to fucking death. They Soleil me.
Building capacity, 18,000 people.
Jesus Christ.
I don't know what that's for exactly, if it's
40
basketball
years
or something
ago,
else.
you could have got fucking half a Little Rock in there.
This is North Little Rock, too. I don't know the exact distinction. Across the Arkansas River from Little Rock, I guess. Okay.
North Little Rock is now where many of the fancier facilities of various things are located, I understand. A little more hoity-toity over there these days. But it's the same city. It's just there's a river in the middle. It's, but an 18,000-seat building, and they had 2,600 tickets out if nobody had severe diarrhea or whooping belch that day and wasn't able to come. So no wonder they couldn't shoot most of the fucking building.
The comparisons, the late era of WCW have always been there for AEW, but in a lot of ways, it's really more 1989 WCW right now, where Flair and Steamboat are having classic matches in empty buildings. The Superdome, Chicago for the pay-per-view. I don't remember how many people were there for Nashville.
Well, no. Hold on now. Chicago. No, I would think at least I could, hold on. Wait a minute.
Yeah, how many people were there?
Hey, hold on. I got to reach. I'm not as young as I used to be.
But you have matches that smart fans think are classic. And again, this was a great match.
Yes.
But people aren't paying to go to those matches. Now, with that said, and we'll talk about the ratings a little later, as anyone would have thought, clearly this is the one match with the two guys that intrigued and held the audience more than anything else they have. The problem is they don't have much else. And I also fear they're going to somehow reintroduce Daniel Garcia into this thing.
Well, if they want to wheel him out on a gurney and let him be in the corner of Ospreay to watch him try to get even, then that's lovely. They can. And by the way, yes, I agree with you. Superdome was an empty building. And which other place did you?
Nashville.
Nashville was I wasn't there, but it was empty. But no, Chicago, the house was $69,700 for ticket prices at the time. There was probably around 5,000 to 6,000 in a 10,000 seat building. So it wasn't empty. It just wasn't good. Yeah. That's the same building we had sold out 7 shows in a row like 2 years before.
But there's a lot of similarities there in that, TV numbers may be there, may not be there, but it's about people coming out and wanting to see it. This is the one match. I mean, we'll see what they do, how they're going to propel this, how they'll keep it going. But these are the 2 guys that are the most intriguing in the entire company right now, by far.
So anyway, I have to applaud young Willie Apter. I just like the way Dusty would say Bill Apter's name. But Willie boy, you done good there. Wonderful Willie Ospreay. That's what it should have been.
Dave Meltzer in The Observer, 5 3/4 stars on the 7-star scale.
Well, it's because Kenny wasn't in it.
Yeah.
Dave still has a soft spot for his nephew Kenny. But anyway, that was the first, hour and 5 minutes of the program. Is that correct?
Give or take, yeah, just about.